Okay, we are live with Craig Ballantyne. And Nick, I was just saying, I don't know if you know this or not, but I was just checking up on him. I was basically stalking him on social media. And I didn't know, but he got married. Craig.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, and I just saw a regular Tuesday afternoon wedding that we had out here in Vancouver.
Oh, nice. Congratulations, man. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
man. Yeah.
Cool.
You know, it had all the things of the delays and all that sort of stuff because of COVID. So we, in 2020, we had said, okay, we're gonna do, get married in August. We got engaged in January, and then Vancouver. Well, so we went to Miami for the winter time, and then when we were there, Vancouver got way worse because it was real nice last summer, and then it was like, oh, well, we're not even sure if we'll be able to have more than 10 people to our wedding, so we'll just wait till 2022. There isn't any real rush. It doesn't really change anything in our lives. And then my wife's grandfather got really sick, and so we're like, well, we don't want him to not be around for the wedding, not COVID related sick, but just 90-year-old sick. And so he was able to make the wedding, and he was able to help walk her down the aisle, and everything went great. My mom was able to come out but we didn't book the wedding till about 10 weeks before the wedding, which is why our only option was a Tuesday afternoon. Fortunately, 80% of our attendees were retired, I think, so they had nothing else going on.
That's cool. So when you went down to Florida, is that when you step foot in Florida, did they give you the Live Free t-shirt now? Is that the way it works?
No, this is funny because it's actually
Florida advertising. That's Florida advertising.
This is me. This is me advertising.
Sorry.
No. This is actually from a CrossFit in Florida.
Oh,
so I'm down in Florida, and we were just bouncing from Airbnb to Airbnb, and I'm in this one area, our first Airbnb, and some guy says, hey, I have a CrossFit down the street. I noticed like you're in my neighborhood at some of the restaurants. I'm just down the street. You can come by anytime and work out. So I went down and worked out, and he gave me this shirt, and the CrossFit is called like Live Free Miami. And so I have this t-shirt. I'm like, it's the greatest t-shirt I've ever had in my life. And I wear it on every podcast because it's like, I went through this little exercise about why I do what I do in my business, and everything to me comes down to freedom. Like I would work, and I did for a long time, I would work 14 hours a day so that I didn't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. Like that's my mentality. I'll do anything to not be told what to do. So this is my model, freedom and live free. And it just happened. Somebody gave me a t-shirt. So now I wear it everywhere, even though it's from a CrossFit, and I don't like CrossFit, but it's my motto. Yeah.
How was it living in Miami it
was great, man. It was great. Now, when we got down there, the gym that we went to, you had to wear masks when you went to the gym for the first month, like in March. But I started hosting one-day events down there for like 12 to 15 people in March as well. And then I went to a mastermind that had 150 people in April. And then they let everybody go maskless at gyms and stuff. And then the middle of April, we met some of these young kids at a mastermind meeting who are involved in the nightclub scene, and we would follow them on Instagram, and the biggest clubs in Miami with like 1,500 people at them in an evening, and everybody we met at the gym already had COVID. But my wife and I, we've been everywhere. We've been to Costa Rica, Miami. We were in South Beach during spring break, and we've flown across Canada 6 or 7 times. So we've never been sick. And I don't know if that's because we're those people who, there's a small percentage of people who can't get it. I don't know. Hopefully that's me, or we've just been incredibly lucky, but it just defies my brain as to how I haven't gotten sick yet. And I hope I never do. It's a very serious illness. I don't want to get sick, but I've been very fortunate, and even I was even in California in the middle of August, and at another mastermind with 150 people, and I didn't get sick then either.
Yeah, Nick and I were just talking about it. We added it up. Nick took 8 flights this summer. I took 10 flights this summer, and we were fortunate as well. So the same as you. It's yeah. But what do you think about this? So this whole live free message, to become an entrepreneur, are you just somebody who doesn't listen to other people? Like, is that the number one trait? Like, is that the trait? Because I know Nick's like that. I quit because I just couldn't have, my defining moment was extrapolating my life forward and thinking, how would I feel if my son was 10 and I asked for vacation time to go see him play in a hockey tournament, and my boss told me I couldn't go? For me, that crushed me, even though my son at the time was like 1 or 2, and it made me put in the wheels in motion to quit my job.
I think we're just unemployable in one way or another. And whether you're unemployable because you just have different ideas and you're sick and tired of like, you know, you working for a big corporation. Like my wife used to work in the sport nutrition world out here in Vancouver, like for Vega, and then for this vegan cheese company, Dea, which you see in stores. And, you know, she just had ideas about, why are we doing it this way? This is a better way of doing it. And, you know, nobody listens to you. And I think she just got eventually sick of it and went out and started her own stuff. For me, I was unemployable just for many reasons, even though when I was employed, I was a very good, hardworking employee. I basically was an entrepreneur. I was in early, stayed late, you know, ideas for the marketing department, even though I wasn't in the marketing department. But I was just unemployable in other ways. But then, you know, there's some people who are looking for the freedom, who have that mindset of, I'm not missing X, Y, Z in my life, even if it means sacrificing A, B, and C. You know, like you guys, I've heard your story of you guys starting up your business and the sacrifices you made, but you still, with all those sacrifices, were able to do the things that you want. And, you know, I came from a farming background. So, you know, my dad didn't have a conventional job, but it allowed him to do certain things, but it stopped him from doing other things. And that's just a sacrifice in life. So I think that for anybody who's an entrepreneur, there's a couple of things that are involved. One, you have to be a problem solver. You have to want to solve problems. You have to have creative ways of solving problems, and you have to have an unconventional way of doing things. And you know, it's just with the risk of upsetting people out there, most of the people I know who I associate with are entrepreneurs, want nothing to do with the vaccine. And especially the one, like I know a lot of guys in Texas and Florida. I know a few guys still in California for some strange reason, they won't leave. And they want nothing to do with it. And they're very freedom oriented. And I think that there's probably a fair amount of people listening who hate that message, but there are probably a lot of people listening to your show that are like, yeah, nobody tells me what to do. And as long as I'm not hurting anybody, then be alone. Like, I just want to be left alone and to do what I want to do.
That sounds like you. That's Nick, well, exactly.
I have things I like to do. And
like, I'm sorry for employing dozens of people and paying more in taxes some years than most people do in their lives. Just leave me alone and let me continue doing
so let me ask you this, with the way the world's changing, and I'm not talking about vaccine or no vaccine, but just, you know, with different restrictions on travel and coming and going, and are you doing anything different? Are you planning differently for the next few years? Has it changed your thinking at all with new restrictions for movement and?
Yeah. I mean, has it changed my fundamental thinking? No, it's definitely made me hurry up and accelerate some things. So, you know, we're going to get temporary residency in Mexico. We are applying for one of those citizenships by investment passports in the Caribbean, which, you know, we've just sent in everything for that. You know, these are insurance policies. I do not want to leave Vancouver. That's where I live now. That's where my wife's family is. We're having a baby in March of next year. You know, you don't want to move hundreds, thousands of miles away from your family because you need their support. They want to be around the baby. I am hoping, so it's like a continuum of best case and worst case scenarios, right? Best case scenario, I will remain in my basement because I'm now locked out of society, a lot of society here in BC, because I can't go to my gym. And, you know, so I'm going to work out at home. I'm going to stay. I'm not going to hurt anybody in any way. That's not what I want to do. So I'm hoping that I can just live and do that, live freely, stay here, have our baby, be with our family. And this is the worst that it gets. Now, if it does get worse, then, you know, in my mind, the worst case scenario is that, okay, great, we get this, one of these second passports. Even if we don't, we'll go to Mexico. One of my friends, I don't know if you guys follow Simon Black at sovereignman.com, but he just had his baby in Mexico. And he said it was an amazing experience. So he lives in Puerto Rico. His baby has 5 passports because he has multiple passports. So the baby now has Italian, American, Mexican, because when you have a baby in Mexico, the baby is automatically becomes a Mexican citizen. Just like if I went to America and had my baby would automatically become American. Or if anybody comes to Canada and they have a baby in Canada, I believe their baby is automatically Canadian. Same with Costa Rica. And so his baby also has Chilean because he has a Chilean passport, and I think one more, but Ukrainian because the mother's Ukrainian. So that baby has 5 passports. That's already. Nice. I know, it's crazy. But he had a tremendous experience in Mexico. It cost him $3,500 for like the OB was with them for 24 straight hours beside them, like didn't leave. The OB was with them all. Like the entire thing was great. And, if things get worse here, we probably have until about January to make that decision for a March baby. That's probably a little too late, but December. The only thing is again, my wife's grandfather is sick, and we don't want to leave. We don't want to leave her grandma. If he passes away and she has to grieve, we don't. But everybody will have a line in the sand for what you're willing to tolerate.
Yeah.
Is the Mexican one different? Oh, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was going to say, because we were able to get our Croatian passport for our father and our UK passport through our mother. And so we got them years ago, just like we're like, hey, you just never know if you want them. Now, with the way things are going, the UK one is looking less and less appealing.
Yeah.
But the
UK one looks more appealing than Canadian right now.
Maybe now,
yeah.
And then with and the Croatian one's kind of like you just never know if you just need to take off.
Croatia's on what, like, I know I introduced you to my friend Peter over there, but from what I understand, like Croatia isn't too far down on my list of places that I would go to if I had to.
There's a couple of people we know that are in other parts of the world right now. They've left Canada and they're in other parts of the world. And they're like, we're exploring that as one of the options. They have a digital nomad thing right now that people can get into. And because of the way the lifestyle is, they're like, it's not too bad. But so that's in the back of our heads. But at the same time, then, because of all this, we ended up buying a place just up north. So like because up north.
In Ontario?
Yeah. In Collingwood. We bought a place in Collingwood last year.
Okay, cool.
Because when everything hits the fan, in those other smaller areas, it was just much more normal, right? It wasn't like the kind of like the fear and panic that overtook the cities. So we have that as a backup plan. Then we have a trip planned later this year. We're waiting for a couple more islands, one specific island to wait, Cayman in particular, to open up a little bit, to go down there and look at some properties as another kind of option for ourselves. Just like you're kind of building out options for yourself, we're trying to build out our own options depending on where things go. And whether this is COVID or not, I think it taught us that, to the point, like if we started with the live free thing and why you do what you do, we're similar, your life, your terms, it's aligned similarly. We're like, we've just realized now that whether it's COVID or not, that what we take for granted can change very quickly. And we want to be prepared for, if and when it happens again.
Yeah. The problem is pre-COVID, like if you had this mindset pre-COVID, there were clear delineations on where you would go, based on your nationality and how easy it was. Like Panama used to be a really great place for Canadians to get a visa to live there, to become a citizen, get a second passport. But COVID is the wild card because Panama locked down really hard. And so like it has all these things going for it for Canadians who want to retire to a nicer, warmer weather, or just be a digital nomad down there. Checks the box. And then COVID comes along and they put the hammer down. Yeah. And so you don't know, you still have to do all the preparation and you have to think about, hey, I can go here and that sort of stuff. But that's just so wild card. Like you have no idea what the government is going to do. And if they elect a new government, if it's going to get better, worse, or neutral. So, but as long as, when you have the mentality of, okay, here's what's most important to me. And this is looking like the thing right now. Great, I'm going to move towards it. You can't be paralyzed by fear, like, because you could easily get paralyzed by fear. And I don't want people to be fearful and listening to this. Like, I'm very fortunate. My family still has a farm, an hour and a half, I guess it's 2.5 hours from downtown Toronto, where you're right. It is a conservative part of Ontario. We have a farm. We have my mom has a big garden there. And if we're, worst case scenario, we went there, we would live okay, and so I don't want to think like, oh, you got to go to a new country you've never been before. like, 1840s or whenever my relatives came from Scotland to Canada. I don't want to terrify anybody that, but everybody can make slight adjustments to become more free and protect what really matters to them.
I think in our lives, in our business, we've never wanted a single point of failure. We've
Exactly.
always thought just no single point of failure in anything we do. And now you just extrapolate that out to citizenships and passports. The Mexican one, I don't know anything about. Is that an easy one or a difficult one?
It's a relatively easy thing. So first of all, on the easiest thing anybody can do is any Canadian could go to Mexico for 6 months on vacation, right? Like you have 6 months before your stay
you're supposed
is
to
up.
leave. Yeah.
Okay. So that alone is a great place to start. Now, they have a couple of things that allow you to stay there longer term. One is a temporary residency. And to get a temporary residency, which allows you to stay in Mexico for about 2 to 3 years, you don't have to stay there indefinitely. You can go there, get your temporary residency stamped and then leave. Because I have a bunch of friends that have done this from all over the world. But it allows you to open a bank account. It allows you to do a couple other things, like start a business there, a few other things. And you can easily Google this. And in order to get a temporary residency from Mexico, you have to go and you have to get an appointment at the Mexican consulate in your city. The wait list in Vancouver, I went in there in August. We don't have an appointment till November. So it's going to be a long time. To also, if in Toronto, I think they have one in Calgary. They have, like, you'd be surprised, like they have a Mexican consulate in Vancouver. Yeah, they do, because there's a lot of people coming this way too. So, anyways, you go to the Mexican consulate in your area, you get a temporary residency. Then you have to go to Mexico within 6 months, anywhere down there, and you get it stamped. And great, now you have this 2 to 3 year thing. If you're retired, you can accelerate the process and become a permanent resident of Mexico just as easily. All you have to do is prove, I think your income is $2,500 a month in retirement income or something like that, or you have X amount of money in like maybe $250,000 in the bank or in assets or something. It's not extremely difficult. Like, not everybody can do it, but you do the same thing. You go to the Mexican consulate, you get the appointment, you check all the boxes, then you got to go to Mexico, you go down there, boom, you get the thing stamped, and you can stay in Mexico for 5 years. And so the other thing is that, not 2019, we're not having this conversation. 2021, we are like look at Australia, right? Worst case scenario. If you're an Australian citizen with no second passport, with no other residency, it's very difficult for you to get out. But I think that if you have a second passport, you can say, well, I'm going to my other country, and you'd probably be accelerated in the process of getting out. I think anybody can get out. It just takes a long time. And especially, and you can't go out for 2 weeks and come back. They frown on that. But if you say I'm going somewhere for a year, then they're like, okay, but where are you going? And you say, well, I have a permanent residency in Mexico. They're like, oh, okay, well, and so on and so forth. So if you can't be denied. It's like when COVID hit, I had some family that were in Florida for vacation, and Canada said, like, you got to come home, right? So they can't stop residents going back to their home country. I mean, I guess they could, but it's not.
You can't.
normal.
Yeah, you show up at a border with a Canadian passport, you're getting in.
Right. So if you're like, well, if you have no other place to go and everywhere is locked down, you can't get out. Because you can't get into somewhere. But if you have those other things, then you can get into some places. And even like in the beginning of COVID, or when like, for example, there was a time when Canadians couldn't go to the UK, and I think they can go now. But if you had a second passport, you could fly to Mexico, and then on your second passport, you could fly to the UK. You're still a Canadian, but you have two passports, and you're coming from a country that's not Canada. You could actually go to the UK, even though technically you're a Canadian. Mm-hmm. So it's all insurance policies.
It's weird when you have to think about all this stuff now. Like,
it's unfortunate because, like, if your brain is a computer with, like, you've all had your computer slow down and said, like, you're using 90% of your CPU. Well, now you're like I'm dedicating like 20% of my CPU sometimes to how am I going to outsmart Justin Trudeau and whatever he's going to actually, when it comes to outsmarting Justin Trudeau, that's maybe not 20% of my CPU. No, I joke because the guy is unfortunately
I'm not joking.
So yeah, it does. Now, the thing is, and this is something that I learned from Dan Kennedy, is you have to compartmentalize. And like, for example, I have a coaching client. He's he works for the New York City Fire Department, where half the fire department wants nothing to do with the vaccine. His kids have to go back to school and they have to wear masks. He's got a business on the side selling stocks, and he's got all these problems in that business because of, just regulation and stuff like that. So he's like, man, I'm so frustrated and they're making me work all this overtime. I'm like, you got to compartmentalize. You can't, when you're working on the problem of solving the stock business, you can't let any of that CPU be dedicated to the mass that they're forcing on your kids. That has its own 30-minute compartmentalized brainstorm session later, where you can't think about working overtime at the fire hall. You have to only think about the mass thing. And Dan Kennedy taught that about, like when you have, if you're getting divorced or you're dealing with any type of stress, if you think about it all day long, your work suffers. And you just can't. If you're a professional, you have to compartmentalize those things. Now, it's easier said than done, but it's like any type of mental strength, very much like any type of physical strength. You get better at it as you practice it over time. So everybody listening, and you're like, oh my gosh, these guys are freaking me out, or I'm trying to do that stuff, or oh, I'm so upset about this, that, or the other thing. You can't be upset about this, that, or the other thing when it's time to work on this other thing. And when you can learn to compartmentalize that, here's a really heartwarming story about it. And I was studying this because I was writing an article about it, and I wanted like a real good example. So 2010 Olympics, and this story is already giving me like goosebumps. 2010 Olympics, this girl, Julie Rochette, I think her name is, for Canada, she's going to skate at the Olympics, and her mother dies either on the plane there or like 3 days before. And she goes, and I mean, like, I don't even know this woman. I'm like tearing up at this story. She goes and she skates to a bronze medal performance 3 days after her mother dies. And you can only ascribe that to compartmentalization. As a professional, she put aside the greatest heartbreaking thing in her life to go and perform at the highest level. And if she can do that, let that be an inspiration to you to like, okay, I'm going to focus on, this real estate deal. And then I got 30 minutes dedicated to figuring out how I get more freedom for my family or my kids or whatever. That's what you got to do.
When's the best time for you to do that? For me, it's early in the morning. When is the best time for you?
Well, for me, it's the compartmentalization. My morning is still my business. And like, that's the most important thing. That's the thing that where if I solve those problems in the business, the marketing, the sales, that sort of stuff, it generates the leverage to solve some of these other problems. And then around the travel and stuff like that, it's really a two-person conversation. So it's really my wife and I talking about this and, being on the same page and making the decisions. So that sort of stuff either happens when we go to the forest and walk the dog in the morning, or when we have dinner, or, at some point during the day we break, or after dinner, but it's us talking about those things and making those decisions together. And we may accumulate some data points over the course of the day separately, but we bring them together at those times. And so that's when we compartmentalize it. I try not to get too much down that rabbit hole early in the day. Otherwise it can, you're human, right? It can set you off in a way that then is that, it's always that little CPU, 20% of the CPU, because you're like
eating. What do you, recently I've had quite a few people come to me and say, Tom, I wish we made decisions like you and Nick made like 10 or 15 years ago. And because I didn't, I'm now in my 40s or whatever, pick your age, because everyone always thinks it's too late. I think I saw a few posts on you talking about this recently. And they kind of are giving off the impression they're giving up because they're like, oh, I should have done what you're telling me 10 years ago.
Well,
How
I'll
do
tell
you
you,
get someone through? How do you get someone through that?
yeah, I'll tell you what, in 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, I wish I had done, something different. If you give up, like giving up is, no one ever looks back in 10 years and goes, great, I'm so glad I gave up, unless you're giving up a bad habit. Like I'm very glad I gave up drinking. I wish I would have gave up drinking a long time before that, but I didn't. But nobody looks back and says, I'm really glad I gave up on trying to become a real estate investor. I don't think anybody's ever said that in the history of ever. And so you have to keep doing the hard things. But I mean, that's what separates successful people from everybody else, is that the successful people never gave up during the hardest moments of their life. Like being an entrepreneur, being a real estate investor, I mean, it's not all, puppy dogs and unicorns, crap and rainbows. It is up and down. You have to be committed to this on a day when someone's going to punch you in the stomach and your spouse is going to walk out on you and your dog is going to get hit by a car. There's going to be days like that, like literally days like that. And you still have to show up and have the gumption to make the right decisions. And you have to compartmentalize all those other things that unfortunately happen, because everybody's going to go through those. And for anybody that's sitting there thinking it's too late or this is hard, it ain't going to get any easier and you ain't going to get any younger. So if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? And ain't no Marty McFly's driving around with DeLoreans in your neighborhood offering you a chance to go back 10 years. So you have to do it now.
Marty McFly. That's
Craig's dating himself now. See, he's getting old. I am old. The younger crowd is like, who is that? What is he talking about?
I know. I wrote a post the other day. It said 30 years ago, I was going down the wrong path in life. And people were like, I don't understand how 30 years ago, like they don't realize how old I am. But I'm like, yeah, it's 30 years ago.
But so hold on then. If in that way, because isn't then one of the most doesn't it boil down to being able to control your emotions? Because doesn't everything come back in that way? Is either like it's fear, or if you can't compartmentalize, it's being able to kind of control the anger and stuff like that. Like, isn't it the emotional control and what I'm thinking about is when you talk about real estate investing, because it's an emotional roller coaster. Mm-hmm. So like when a tenant leaves and the properties, they did a little bit of damage, is messier than you want. You're like, oh shit, I got to call the handyman guy, plumber, do all this. I don't want to deal with any of this crap. Put the for sale sign on the thing. It's basically just removing emotions from the equation and then basing your decisions off of something else. Is that right? Sure. Or am I simplifying it too much?
Absolutely. So let's pick on the Leafs. All right. Let's pick on the Leafs. Jeez. How many times have they been up 3-0?
Yeah,
too many.
That's not right. And so all the guys in the other dressing room, like, we're down 3-0. I may as well call the country club and book a time for Friday, because we can just lose tomorrow night and I can be golfing Friday morning. But the other teams don't do that. The other teams go, dang, we're down 3-0 to the one of the fastest skaters, sharpest shooters. Like, we might go get blown out again tonight, but we're going to show up because we are professionals and that's what we do. And we're going to show up and we're not going to worry about the score at the end of the game. We're going to worry about every single shift. You go out there and you do your job. You guys in? I'm in. You're in? Let's do it. And we go out there and we play every shift. So action beats anxiety. That's in one of my books. Action beats anxiety. If you're sitting there and you're going, oh man, I'm 41. I haven't bought my first investment property. These guys are talking about moving. Oh my God. Like, okay, great. You can sit there and continue and make that list, or you can go, oh, okay. So in their program, Tom and Nick say, do this. Great. I'm going to go and do that. And I'll tell you what, the easiest, fastest victory that people can get is surrounding themselves with other people who have done or are doing what they want to do. If you're sitting there and you're 30 pounds overweight, hanging around other people that are 30 pounds overweight is not going to help you in any shape or form. Hanging around people who were 30 pounds overweight, or who used to be 30 pounds and are now 20 pounds overweight, hang around those people. So hang around the people who have bought multiple homes, who are, real estate investors who are in the process of buying their first home. Spend time with those people. And you're saying, well, you can't spend time with people these days. You can on the internet. You can either spend time on the internet with people that are pulling you down, or you can spend time on the internet with people that are pulling you up. So you get involved. I don't know the intricacies of your membership site, but maybe do you guys have a community?
We do for part of the membership. We do. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just get involved some way, shape, or form, and or even at the very least have Tom and Nick in your ear all day long, because you guys have long podcasts. So that would not be difficult to do. So you guys will, you can have these people in your ears, even if you live miles away, even if you don't know anybody else buying their first home. You can have Tom and Nick and all their success stories in your ear all day long. And that's what you have to surround yourself with. That's the easiest first victory, because then you're like, okay, this is really scary. I'm going to go and I'm going to look at these 10 houses, and I'm going to, they said, do this for your first deal. I'm going to do it. You got to pull the trigger eventually. You have to do it.
See, I'm a passionate person. So I'm passionate, not intense, or whatever you want to call it. So what happens with me is when I reach a moment in my life, and this happens multiple times, like, when you get off the rails a little bit. Yeah. So two different things. If I can't do something that I feel like I should be able to do, would be one scenario. Or if I've been operating in a way that's been working, and for some reason it's not working anymore, I feel like overwhelmed, or I'm just not getting done what I need to get done. And I guess I call it my anger, but it's not really, it's my frustration. And when my frustration kicks in, I'm like, it just changes everything. I'm like, okay, enough of this. This is BS. It's like, all of a sudden, I revamp my schedule. The next day, my body will automatically just start waking up at an extra, just that 30 minutes. I already get up probably between 5:30 and 6. So it just gets up that extra little half hour earlier. And then I just get back on the horse. And it's the level of frustration that I reach that triggers that in me. And it's happened multiple times, just even in a fitness environment where I was in a fitness competition, so CrossFit, which you don't like, but it was, and I felt
like how you hesitated.
They don't like me, which I don't really care.
Okay. Nick hesitated to say it. It was
no, it's just that they don't like me, or they didn't used to.
When I said fitness competition, I thought like the fitness competition on stage when they're doing a thing. Oh, wasn't that. But I'm like, I couldn't do this one thing that I thought I should be able to do. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why can't I do this? So then I just buckled down, hired a coach specifically for that thing. I'm like, I'm going to make sure that by this time I can do this damn thing. And I find that, like, it's weird. So with the emotional side of things, I have this kind of like love-hate relationship, because, sometimes it's like that type of emotion, like the frustration really can lead to bad things. But for myself personally, when it's channeled properly, it actually has led to a lot of development and a lot of growth in my life too, because I'm like, for lack of a better term, like, fuck this, I'm going to get this done and nothing's going to flip and stop me. Right.
Yeah. So it's problem solving. And so the one way to reframe any of these situations is, everybody's done some type of problem, whether crossword puzzle or Sudoku or whatever those things are called, or a crossword puzzle, or a jigsaw puzzle, and everything, it's just a problem. It's just a puzzle to solve. So if you haven't done what you want, if you're like looking, going, oh man, I haven't achieved those things, it's just a puzzle. So solve this problem and spend some time in thinking. I force all of my clients to spend at least an hour and a half walking in the woods if they have that convenient to them. That's where you're going to solve your problems. You're going to solve your problems there, and you just need to go and think and all your experience and all your connections and tap into those things, and then the path will start to become clearer to finally making the change. Because again, if you just sit there and think, oh, woe is me, I haven't done these things, I'm not where they're at, that's not going to get anybody to that where you want to get to. So let's just find the quick victory and go for it.
That's a huge point. So we know one of the guys that works with us, who's one of your clients, he walks in the woods, and he told us about it too. And it's funny, I find the same thing, like, and Tom, I know you're like this too. You need to give yourself free time and freedom to allow your brain to just, it's amazing. It sounds like airy fairy, but it's so true, because the brain will naturally just work on the problems like you're talking about, and things come to you when you're not always pumping it with stimulation from all this other crap around you, right? And I know, Tom, you're the same way with the stuff that you do. If you don't give yourselves breaks, it's like you just can't think of anything new, right?
There's a guy who does a lot of business with Tony Robbins in the Business Mastery Program. His name is Keith Cunningham, and Keith Cunningham has a book called The Road Less Stupid. And I think the second chapter of that book is dedicated to giving yourself 2 to 3 sessions per week of 45 minutes to 2 to 3 hours of sitting in a chair with no distractions and solving your problems. And then if you take a look at Richard Koch in his book, The 80-20 Principle, Richard Koch sits beside like a koi pond and solves his problems. Warren Buffett sits at a desk all day long, reads and solves his problems. And there's no technology. That's what he used to do, right? And so it's thinking. Like, you have to think. You have to be in a proactive mode. If you're in a reactive mode, then you'll never make the space in your mind to solve these problems. And that's kind of like what I do with, I do that with my morning routine program. I do that with my discipline program. We do that with our coaching. Is we make the space usually it's an entrepreneur's mind, sometimes a real estate investor's mind. We make the space in your mind and in your schedule to solve the pressing problems. Yeah. And if you do not make the space in your brain, right, like clear the CPU so it's not using 90% of your CPU when you're trying to solve a difficult problem, or you don't make the space in your schedule so you actually have devoted thinking time, it's going to be very difficult for you to do anything but tread water in your life.
So Craig, are you doing that now? And in your calendar, how often are you doing
Fridays
that?
Are off. Fridays are off. They were completely off. Then we have one executive team meeting, but it's, all the books that I buy from Amazon, I'll read some. That's the day for the long walk. And then some of my stuff is like, I have a long list of all the people I know. And I just go through and it's like, I haven't talked to this person in a while. I should send him a note. And this person. It's just,
how powerful is that? Isn't that alone what you just said? Yeah. So powerful. Nick and I were just talking about this the other day. Randomly, somebody comes to mind, text them, email them, call them. It changes your life.
Yeah. So I'm in a mastermind group, and there's this guy named David Meltzer. He's big in the sports agency world or something. He's really popular in social media. Anyways, he said, like, every single day, send a thank you message to somebody. So now every single day I send a 30 to 45 second thank you video to somebody. And sometimes I close my eyes and I'll come to me, and then I'll make a video for them. And it's just something that's been helpful for me to be grateful and that sort of stuff. And then also to reconnect with somebody, instead of saying, like, just sending a text and saying, hey, what's up? But like, hey, here are 9 things that I love about you and I'm grateful for. And they're like, oh man, it's like, hey, we should jump on a call and talk about this. And the next thing you know, we can solve some problems. But a lot of the problems that we have in life can be solved through our network. Like, I believe, like, I got married this summer because of, through my network. I have a friend in Toronto who runs a program called the Toronto Ladies Business Community. I said to her, smart, beautiful women, would you introduce me to a couple? And long story, well, she sent me 5 Instagram profiles and I went, nope. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then I was like, I don't want to be ungrateful. So I went and I looked at all the girls that she followed, or the women that she followed. And I said, what about this girl? And she said, well, she lives in Vancouver now. And I said, no, I'd really like an introduction. And, 18 months later,
wow,
24 months later, we're married. So,
wow.
So the more people the easier it is to solve every problem in your life. Because if 100 people, they've all had 100 problems, and maybe they've solved half of them. So they've solved 500 problems, and maybe you have 10 of those problems. The answers to your problems are in other people.
How do you grow your network or increase the amount of people you know? Is that a strategic thing or is it an organic thing?
There's a couple of ways. One, I read a bunch of books. I'm on these podcasts. People are always asking me on podcasts, so I get on podcasts with everybody. And usually, and when one of the things I started doing all these podcasts, I've probably been interviewed about 600 times on other people's podcasts. But it was because I randomly won an hour call with Dan Kennedy. And he was, and this was back in 2016 when I released my first book. And he said, every time I do a teleseminar for somebody's group, which, really old school before podcasts, I sell 100 books. And I go, okay, let's see. If I do 100 podcasts and I sell 100 books, I sell 10,000 books. Now, it doesn't work exactly that way, probably. But so I said, I'm going to do 100 podcasts. And the next thing you know, I'm doing 600. But every time I did a podcast, I said, do you know 2 other people who would like to have me on your podcast? So it's like when you cut off the Hydra's head in Greek mythology, 2 grow back. So I was always asking for, do you know 2 people? Who are the 2 people you know who would like to have me on their podcast? And, like I just started another business. I started this accountability and productivity app called Winning Streak. And every time I do a demo video for somebody, I say, who are 1 or 2 other business owners who would like to use this for their sales team or their coaching clients? I would love to show it to them. And it goes from 100 people, and soon I have 200 people, then I have 400 people, then I have 800 people, then I have 1,600, and so on and so forth. And that's how you can grow, is every single time you meet somebody and add value to them, ask for an introduction to at least 1 other person, if not 2 other people. And they will give those introductions to you. And the next thing you know, like I got to a point where I just couldn't do all the podcasts that people were trying to get me on. And it, just became a matter of time. But that's how you can grow.
That's the key. When you said at the end, you said add value. And I think that's because you add value, and then you ask, and then people are happy to help you because you're helping them. Right. And I know sometimes early on when people try that approach, sometimes they forget that part of it. Right. And they ask first. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like, hey, come from a place where you can serve and try to help people. And then really, like you said, a lot of doors open when you're able to do that, if you come from that. And sometimes the answer of how you can help isn't obvious. So then maybe don't reach out right away. Like take some time to think about it and figure out how you can, help.
And Craig, Nick, I was just going to say, in our business, we constantly get people asking something of us. Can I talk on the stage if you're doing an event? Can I talk on your podcast? And right away, it's just a bad taste in your mouth. Then we have other people who are always offering value. We barely even know them. They just randomly will send us things, and then we don't have time to respond, but then they'll show up or make an introduction, send a referral. And over a couple of years, you pay attention and you realize, who is this person that we don't even know that's adding so much value to our lives that we didn't even ask for? And then we almost feel obligated. Like it literally is that law of
reciprocity. Yeah.
Too much wine.
Yeah. It's so
I couldn't even get the full first syllable out.
Yeah. So there's 2 things here. There's 2 things here, because I think some people may be sitting there and going, but I'm not an extroverted person, or I don't go out and schmooze at events and that sort of thing. And so I want to go way back in time. I'm 24 years old in 1999, and I started an email newsletter for my fitness business. I didn't have a website. I was like, this is so old school, right? I kept all my emails for my newsletter, my subscribers, in a Word document, and I would send the newsletter out through Hotmail. But people would refer other people to join the list, and then because I had this list, then I could go to big names, quote unquote, in the fitness industry, and I said, hey, Mike Boyle, you're the strength coach in the National Hockey League. Would you, do an interview for my email newsletter list? And I have 3,000 people on it, and he had a book that he wanted to sell. And here I am, some kid interviewing big name stuff. So that's the great thing about, today it's podcasts. I've got an audience, you're a big name, you can grow your network that way. But I was very introverted, socially anxious, and I grew a massive network in a niche market because I added value, but I did it all from behind a keyboard. So there is no excuse. Even in this day and age, there's many, many tools. And the cool thing about the social media like Instagram, if people use it, is you can send a message to somebody who has 450,000 followers, and there's a good odd that they will actually reply to you themselves, because they're just so addicted to Instagram. So I've communicated with people that have very big followings. So there's no reason not to try and grow your audience. And then you might also be thinking, but what value do I have? And that's where, what I love doing is I love connecting people. And so I actually have a very good memories, but people might have to do this a little more manually. But when I talk to somebody and they say, I have this problem, I go, I know a person who can solve that problem. I'm going to send an email introduction to you immediately after this call. That person will help solve your problem. And now, even though I didn't do the work, I provided a tremendous amount of value to both of those people. Maybe this person hired the hired person solved that person's problem. There's a win-win-win situation. And you can get to the point where, you can almost make a business out of being a professional connector. Dan Kennedy would call it a toll booth situation. But I just get a kick out of it. I get such a rush out of being able to say, hey, Tom and Nick, you need to meet my friend Peter who lives in Croatia. He can probably give you the inside scoop, even though you guys go there regularly. He'd be great assistance. And then you guys could probably, he'd probably have a few questions to ask you about real estate. And again, there's a value add. And I mean, I don't think there's anything easier in the world to help somebody than to make connections. I just love it.
What do you think the purpose of life is, Craig? You're bringing in a child into this world in a few months. I mean, now you have a business, you're going to be able to go to Mexico. I know this is a big question, Nick. This is like, he's in his 40s. He's in his 40s. I'm trying to get his perspective. I want to see him skate out of this question.
No, I want to see how the scheduling works with once the child arrives too.
Man. Yeah. That's a new book. That's a new book for Craig right there. The perfect week formula with kids. It just
can totally be done. Don't get me wrong, Craig. I'm not
right under here.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not I'm not discounting it because it can totally be done with discipline and stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm still
I'm very fortunate that I have coaching clients who have just had another baby and that sort of stuff. But I mean, I'm already preparing. I'm preparing by giving my team more responsibility, by growing my team members so that I become less a part of the business, so that when this happens, I'm able to step away and say, odds are that my schedule will be very fluid. I do well on very little sleep, but even I won't be doing well on 2 hours of sleep a night or whatever it will be. It will be clear that I am not going to be performing at the highest level, but that's the whole part of the next 6 months, is to make them even more talented than ever before, to give them the support, to grow them, that is the focus of the business right now, so that when the great miracle happens, I'm able to enjoy it. I'm able to support my wife. I'm able to be present, and I'm able to not have to run off and do stuff right away, and also be able to keep both of us, healthy with the lack of sleep. So I'm preparing for it. But of course, there is nothing that prepares you for having a baby if you've never had one before. So, they'll be very messy, but it'll be a short-term messy, and we'll get back on track as quickly as possible. And, forgive myself when I don't do the best that I can.
I can't wait to talk to you a year from now. And I know everyone says that to you, I'm sure. So,
and it's fine, because it certainly, that's what it is, right?
All the strategies that you teach, and specifically everything you've summarized in the perfect week formula, Nick and I have implemented just with kids. I had to bump everything I was doing up an extra 90 minutes. Yeah. Because I had to get up that much earlier to get a lot of the things that you talk about in the book done before the family would wake up. So it just made my morning start earlier. Otherwise I couldn't, it didn't work, but it all still works. You just kind of adjust your time.
They might even become more important. Not that they were important before, but when you realize that before you could kind of be flexible and not have, you know what I mean? And now you kind of have these other responsibilities that
daily deadlines
interjected, where you want what you want. You want them interjected or not, it becomes even more important, actually.
Yeah, I have seen firsthand, and this is even before I was even in the whole daily schedule type of business, I've seen entrepreneurs become better entrepreneurs by having kids, simply because it cuts so much fluff. You're like, I just had a baby, and I need to support my wife, or maybe it's the woman who was the entrepreneur. It's like, what am I doing, on these newsletters and attending these things and blah, blah, blah. If I just stop these, my business is not going to suffer. And so now I get more done in less time, and the business grows because I'm spending more time on the stuff that really matters. It's true 80-20, right? 80-20 hacking away at the inessential. So I'm hoping that happens. And then also, I really believe my number one purpose and role is not to be an entrepreneur, to be a father. And so that is something I don't take lightly. And so I'm dedicating myself to it. But cool. And then a couple of things before sorry, Nick, is that I understand that babies love routine. Like all my friends who have just had babies said, hey, you'll be kind of sort of okay because the babies want routine as much as you do. And then, everybody who's listening to this who has kids, it's one thing to have your daily routine when your kids are, up to the age of 6. But then when they start staying up later at night, or they start having hockey practice at 9 o'clock at night, I mean, that's where I start getting a lot of objections to my formulas and that type of thing. But my whole shtick is not about you getting up early in the morning. My whole shtick is about you planning and designing your day using the foundational principles. So it doesn't matter if you get up at 8 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning. That doesn't determine your success. It's following the principles.
It's staying structured.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I think I always complain to Nick that when Aiden's hockey practice.
You just always complain to me, period.
No, I don't always complain to you. I'm giving you opportunities to help me. That's what I'm doing.
There we go.
When we would get home like at 11 o'clock at night from his soccer practice, because it was 9 to 10:30, get home, by the time you're in bed, it's 11:15, my 5 a.m., if that was every day, and if I was trying to go to the gym a little bit, I wasn't getting enough sleep. And then I did get frustrated because I couldn't do my early morning stuff. I had to choose more sleep.
Yeah.
And that was tough. I had to kind of come to terms with that. I almost broke a little bit. Like I was really kind of struggling through that adjustment of losing my morning to myself. I needed that time to myself, my thoughts, write down some notes like you talk about. I needed that time. It kind of comforted me. It gave me clarity. It gave me focus, and losing that was really difficult.
I will say this. This is a message that I do try and get across to everybody, regardless if you're a parent or not, but not every day has to look the same. And like, for example, normal Mondays, I sit in this chair until my butt hurts because it's meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. But we get all the meetings done in our team on Mondays so that they are just aligned for the week. We have some shorter meetings every single day, but Monday is just a marathon of meetings. But no other day looks like that. I have way more space to think, but I sacrifice my thinking time on a Monday so that my team feels supported and has everything that they need, which then allows me the opportunity to have more thinking on other days. And so if somebody out there is thinking, well, I want to do this early morning thing, but my kids have XYZ till 9:30 or, like you said, 11 o'clock, because that's the only time they can get the court time or the rink time. That's going to happen. But not every night's going to be like that, most cases. But it also means not every morning is going to be one of those perfect, I've got 120 minutes to, be this brilliant thinker. They're not all going to be like that. But if you just get consistent, imagine if you got 3 days a week like that in a year, that's 150 days of thinking. Yeah. So that's what we need to look at. You don't have to get on base every time, like a successful baseball player, right? If they're on base 3 out of 10 times, 4 out of 10 times, that's pretty darn good. And that's the kind of approach we have to take for ourselves. We have to consistently be good, not be perfect every day.
Hey, Tom, I think, I agree with what you're saying, but Tom, I think Craig skirted your question because I interjected with mine about the baby.
Oh, right. The meaning of life. Is that the meaning of life?
We can skip. No, I mean, meaning of life. Who's going to have that? We'll save. That's a whole other podcast. We'll save the meaning of life question. But I do have a question. Unless you're eager to answer that question, you just jump in. But everything you've seen now, this is now a big tangent I'm taking, but I'm curious because you're in your 40s. Is there a particular diet that you found that works for you? I know I'm switching gears totally here. No. I'm just curious because I feel like now at the age of 48, after monkeying around with different stuff, I kind of feel like, wow, I finally know what to eat, what works for my body, how it works. And it's taking me a lot of time to figure this out. And I'm not perfect at it by any means. But what have you found out? Because I know you've been in the industry for a long time, in fitness industry, and thought about your health. Where are you at with diet for you specifically?
It is my diet and nobody else's diet. That's
That's what I mean. Just what have you learned? Yeah. That's what you've learned. Sorry.
Yeah, that is what I've learned. But people who are thinking, well, I haven't mastered, step number one, what I would do, and the only way that I'm speaking for you, Nick, but probably the only way that Nick, and I know for myself, the only way that we figured out what to eat that's right for us is by tracking it. And today it's easier than ever to track your nutrition. I still use like a spreadsheet and I just like, okay, And here's the thing is you have to make cause and effect, right? So I ate this and I felt like this. That's where we have to start. So if you take a look and you go, okay, well, today, I had a coffee and it was this big and I was like anxious as heck all morning. Well, tomorrow I should probably have smaller coffee. Okay. So I'm associating how I feel with what I consume. And if you consume sugar, you'll probably feel tired. If you consume like a paleo type diet, you probably will have pretty good energy. But if you eat those foods, how does your stomach feel? So you have to like, here's how your energy levels feel. Here's how your digestive system feels. And you just have to track that stuff over time. Now, if you're fortunate enough to go to a nutritionist who may be able to give you, download their decade of experience with what they know about you, and you give them a bit of information, they could probably accelerate the process, just like, a coach can accelerate your process in real estate investing. You don't have to go and, do a whole bunch of deals and then look at everything that went wrong and go, next time I won't do that. You don't have to do it that way, but essentially it's just understand what works for you, understand what works for your schedule, your body, your energy, your digestive system, and your goals. And I wish I could say, well, just follow this one, but it's it really is that. And then once you find it, like I kind of follow a uniform diet, right? Like Steve Jobs used to wear the black turtleneck and jeans, so he didn't have to think about anything else. And for me, I'm totally fine eating the same thing every day. And that's generally what I do. And the good thing is that, through genetics and my regular commitment to exercise, I can kind of freestyle my dinners. Like it's probably healthier than most people's dinners, but it's still like, I don't have to really worry too much. I mean, I don't eat junk or anything like that. And it's just like, you figure out, am I that type of person who responds best to just eating 3 times a day, which is what I do. I tried the 6 times a day thing, and I've tried the intermittent fasting thing. And if I intermittent fast, I go to 140 pounds because I just can't do it. I have to eat. And if I try and eat 6 times per day, it's just too much thinking. It's too much of my CPU, and it's too much cleaning up, and never really full. And I just don't like it. I'd rather eat fairly big meals at breakfast and dinner, and then I usually just have a big giant smoothie and some nuts or something at lunchtime, and that's good for me. So it's again, my diet, if you looked at the actual foods consumed, you'd say that's pretty healthy. It's not like extreme, like, man, you have no fun, but it's pretty healthy. It's just very basic, very boring, 3 meals a day. And that's for me. So over to you now. It's like, okay, here's my schedule. There's no way this is going to work. There's no way this is going to work.
It's so personalized. You're right.
Yeah,
You're
it
right.
is
the biggest
so
things that you
personalized.
said, the biggest things I've taken away from what you said were an elimination diet was really important to like remove foods. That really helped for me, like removing things and then documenting, like you said. And for me, it was the next day. So I would like record things I would eat, and then the next day kind of reflect back on that, because I would feel crappy the next day. And it wasn't necessarily what I had for breakfast. It was, I noticed what I had the day before often, or the night before was making me feel a certain way.
The time that you eat. I mean, eating late is probably one of the biggest problems that people have, because there's the obvious, like you have no willpower and no discipline at night. There's all the temptations in the house. Your kids are eating the junk. You have more junk. It's unnecessary calories. If most people cut out the night eating, that'd be helpful. But it also is very hard on your sleep. The closer you eat to your bedtime, the more poorly you're going to sleep, the more tired you're going to be in the morning, the more you're relying on caffeine throughout the day, which means the more poorly you're going to sleep the next night. So eating at night hurts you that way. But then most people don't know this, but eating late at night also causes heartburn. And if you know how like older men talk like this, it's because they've destroyed their vocal cords with heartburn throughout the night. So if you eat at night, stomach acid comes up through your esophagus, and it destroys your vocal cords over time. And so it's called silent heartburn. And so you end up with a lot of health problems down the road from eating too late at night and then going and lying down immediately. Plus, and again, it ruins your sleep. So if people want to make, start with one nutritional change in their life, is try and separate when you stop eating from your bedtime by 2 hours.
That was a huge one for me. If I stop at like 7 o'clock at night, it's like a miracle sleep I get compared to eating at 9 or 10. And this summer, I totally went off the rails. I was eating something in Croatia called palichinke, which are like crepes with Nutella. And there was so much Nutella in them that I felt the sugar rushing through my veins. Like, when you're just like, that was way too sweet, but I did it all summer, Craig. So part of the reason I'm asking, I just got to dial things back in a little bit myself because it was really a great summer.
Well, this goes with a lot of, my productivity stuff that we've talked about on some of the other shows. Is it's not about adding more things in a lot of cases. Like you could have a really crappy diet and go, I'm going to add a green smoothie every day. Well, you've got a really crappy diet with a green smoothie. Like that's not really that helpful. It's the removal of the distractions and the toxic temptations and the nutrition bombs or the productivity bombs. So if you did nothing but remove that delicious Nutella dessert from your life, you'll be better off than if you added a green smoothie and kept the nutrition.
Yeah.
So that's another thing for everybody to think about is, if you're smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, the best thing that you can do for your diet is stop smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Nick, were you going to say something on that?
No, I'm good. I had never heard that thing about the stomach acid in the esophagus before. That's the first time.
Yeah, most people don't know about that stuff, but it's like, if you really want to have a good night's sleep is, don't drink before bed and don't eat too late. And that's like a couple of the most important things that you can do. The other thing is go to bed at the same time every night. That's the number one thing.
That messes me up. Like I find, I will feel worse that if I stay up a couple hours late than if I have if I go to the bed at the same time, I have a couple glasses of wine that night, I would feel worse without the wine going to bed late and waking up late, same time of sleep than I would going into my regular routine, even with a couple glasses of wine.
Yeah, the routine is key.
Yeah, the routine's a big one for me.
As we wrap up here, I just want to repeat the reason that we love what Craig shares is specifically, I know you have a bunch of books, Craig, and we can talk about any of them, but the perfect week formula, the reason that we hand these out regularly is because in this book, you've condensed probably 10 or 15 different time management and productivity books that we've read over the years into one single book. And as an example, on page 47, you have something called the Billionaire Eisenhower box on page 47 there. Just that alone in this book can change the entire productivity of your whole life if you follow just that one thing on page 47. So the reason I get so excited, because I hand out your book like a giddy school kid, like I'm so excited because I just feel that you've done such a brilliant job of bringing everything together in one place.
Thank you.
So
I'll tell you what.
Thank you for giving for putting this book together. Seriously.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And so this kind of ties in with that person, that fake person we were talking about before, who's 40 and feels like, oh my goodness, I haven't done anything right. The only reason that book is so good is because my first book had so many holes in it. So I wrote the perfect day formula, and we got a lot of positive Amazon reviews, of course, but we got a lot of people saying, but you didn't cover this. And then, I would go and I would present and they'd say, but what about this? And so it was only through getting like 150, but what about this, that we were able to write a book that I should have written in the first place, but I didn't have the experience to do it. So, you got to go and do something. And, it won't be perfect the first time, but the next thing will be a lot better. And so you just have to go and get started. That's what it is for everything in life. And we've talked about three major things here, from nutrition to, making sure that you're taking care of your family with, safe living and that sort of stuff. And then real estate investing, and babies, right? Like, you're not going to be perfect the first time you have a kid or ever, but you have to go and do it because it's worthwhile doing.
Yeah. And I didn't know that after this, I'd be getting on my list for the Mexican consulate in Toronto, Nick.
There you go.
I didn't realize that was going to be the thing.
Let me know what the,
if I do it, I will. Absolutely. If I do it, I'll let you know.
Because it's a long wait time out here in Vancouver. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Craig, where can people, Instagram handle, website, where can people?
Instagram handle is Real Craig Ballantyne. Real Craig Ballantyne. That's the best place to find me.
Oh, is that okay? Real Craig Ballantyne on Instagram.
Yeah, we do have we took a break from LinkedIn, but we're going to be more active on LinkedIn again too. So I don't know how you'd find me on LinkedIn. It's Craig Ballantyne. So I think that's it.
Yeah, they'll track you down. We'll
you're like us. Like I'm like, yeah, you're somewhere. I don't know. Just find me.
Craig, thank you. Always a pleasure catching up, man. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.